All right, welcome back, guys. My next guest, good buddy, Craig Benner at Accretive Media. Great to have you, my friend.
Great to be here.
Good. We're going to talk a little bit about data. Want you to kind of educate and inform. So, first question for you: provide an overview of the process of capturing data to re-engage customers through the out-of-home media, and also kind of give our listeners what are the key steps involved in this process.
So it's a very different process. So people talk about the difference between digital measurement and out of home measurement, and two strikingly different processes, right? So when you think about digital, it's a very linear process. Someone is exposed to an ad, and then they convert on the same device in which they're exposed. And out of home, obviously, we're in the physical world, right? So you're exposed to an ad in the physical world, and then how do you translate that? So what we do is obviously there's the outcomes that you need to measure, and then there's the exposure that you need to measure, and then you need to connect the two. So the process for exposure is mobile location data. And then the process for outcomes is, what you would normally do. It's pixels, it's mobile location data for foot traffic, and it is what it is. So it's a highly advanced process, basically saying, okay, where are the boards? Where are the consumers that can see a board? What's the proximity of a consumer from a board? A highly scientific, what the bearing of the consumer in front of the board, haver seen distance, what's the size of it, what rate of direction are they going? A bunch of things that we do to say, is this consumer in a position to see this out of home advertising? And if they are, then they're now exposed. And from there, we now have an opportunity to say, can we connect that to some sort of, can we connect that to a digital ad? Can we connect that to an outcome? Can we connect that to a variety of different things? Now, over the last number of years, the OAAA, released a methodology that allowed us to do that, or that allows us to standardize this process. And companies like us have made a bunch of advancements so we could create parity and say, hey, we can measure this just like any other channel.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another big thing around data, next question for you. In terms of privacy and data protection, how does your company at Creative ensure that consumers' data is collected and used responsibly in the out of home industry, especially around that concern, right? Because there's so many devices that go past billboards. So it's even a more heightened an awareness. So how does a creative navigate the balance between effective data capturing and respecting the consumer's privacy rights?
Well, I think, and this is a critical question, right? So, because privacy has always been foundational to everything that we do. In fact, we're members of a consortium called the NAI, which is the national or the Network Advertising Initiative, which basically their sole charge is responsible data collection for digital advertising. So number one, we're a broadcast medium, right? So we can never do individual grain one-to-one targeting, and that's a big part of what irresponsible data collection does, or irresponsible data usage is trying to prevent. Is, do you know that it's Ian, not some anonymous device, and are you trying to track Ian based on some things that you know about him? What we do is, first of all, never collect PII, which is personally identifiable information. All we do is we aggregate consumer data, and we say, okay, on aggregate, do these consumers traverse a certain way? Do they move in a certain way? And anytime we ever even come in contact with PII, we get rid of it. We delete it. We all we do is we take the bare minimum. Even when we're putting pixels on websites and we're doing things like that, we take the bare minimum information in order to report. And that's how we that's how we ensure that control and choice is how we operate the business. And the NAI actually has a code of conduct that we adhere to that makes sure that consumer privacy and consumer control is paramount in how we operate the business.
Yeah, and that's imperative, right? That's the first and last question that's always asked on the publisher, the brand, and the data side. So good on you guys for that. One of my favorite questions, because we often talk about this, the ability to bridge, like you answered in the first question, across online, offline, mobile, social, CTV, so many different ways to retarget the consumer. What strategies do you employ to bridge the gap between out of home behavior and online, offline consumer behavior? And what measurement options do you utilize to assess the effectiveness of these strategies?
Yeah, I touched on it in the first question, right? The key to all of this is accurate capturing of consumers that are in front of the out of home ads first, right? So now that we have a very rigorous process to be able to capture exposure of consumers in front of out of home, now the key, now that we have accurate exposure capture, now the key is, what do we want to connect it to? And as you know, the advertising world is omni-channel, so being able to connect it to a bunch of different things helps us get parity with other channels. It helps us to compare our effectiveness to other channels. And spoiler alert, out of home performs absolutely phenomenally. So what we do, number one, is we have something called the out of home graph, and it's effectively a data warehouse that says, okay, we can, now that we have exposure, what can we connect it to? We can connect it to online with pixels. That's web lifts. That's online, or that's online sales. That's all of these other things. But now we can connect it to offline, right? We can connect it to foot traffic. We can connect it to garage data for auto sales. We can connect it to something called ACR data, which is what you're watching on your smart TV. We can connect it to CPG data, which is what's in your fridge. We can connect it to a bunch of different things with anonymous, non-PII data, which says, what's in your household, what's in your garage, what's in your fridge, what are you watching on your TV. So now it's like, okay, if you're a CPG advertiser, if you're a travel advertiser, if you're an auto advertiser, if you're a broadcaster, if you're a streaming service, all of these things, out of home advertiser, we can say online sales, offline sales, anything that you want to measure from a KPI standpoint, we can measure the effectiveness and ultimately connect that to an exposure in out of home, and ultimately say, this drove an outcome that you care about. You can have more confidence in the investment that you're making in this channel, which frankly, a couple of years ago was not very measurable.
Last question for you, and this is paramount, right? Because today we're just continuing to build upon this. What do you see as the future of data capturing and re-engagement in the out-of-home industry, and how is Accretive positioning itself to adapt to these changes, especially what you were just discussing in the context of combining measurements like CTV and digital out-of-home to enhance advertising's effectiveness?
Yeah, it's kind of the culmination of the last number of questions that I just answered, right? Like for us, it's all about the two A's. It's about adoption and it's about adaptation. So for adoption, we built our analytics platform so it was low cost, quick speed to market, because our core thesis as an organization is, we think out of home has always driven results for advertisers, but the industry has not been great at proving it. So similar to digital in the mid 2000s, like if we can prove that out of home works, then people will increase their spend, they'll feel more comfortable with their investments, and they'll ultimately grow it. So gain adoption and overall measurement across all out of home spends, and then adapt that in an omni-channel world. So once people realize and when they engage us and they see how easy it is to measure core KPIs and core metrics that they're used to seeing with other channels, they now start saying, oh, well, CTV is less measurable. We want to measure the CTV retargeting and the coordination of channels, the format sequencing that we're doing with out of home and CTV. We want to use your platform to do this. We want to ultimately, the goal of any omni-channel marketer is to, to create proper frequency across all channels to influence consumers to act, right? And that's not just out of home, that's not just digital, that's across all of their measured media. So we provide them a view into out of home that they can ultimately measure across all their channels. And that's what gets me excited about how we can do that using our technology and using our out of home graph.
Yeah, and adoption is key, right? As we continue to go down this path and you see rinse and repeat XYZ category, this is how to effectively combine X and Y media with this specific brand type, and it sees success over and over again and build upon that. So, look, I'm grateful for everything you do in the industry, and I appreciate this time, and hopefully this was very educational and beneficial for our listeners. Thank you, my friend.
No problem.